Hi everyone. So I am back today to talk a little bit about the childhood roots of avoidant attachment. You'll have to excuse me. I've done all sorts to try and soothe my throat and to stop coughing, but I will do my best. So, if you are somebody who identifies towards the dismissive avoidant attachment style, you will likely be somebody who thinks things like, I learned early on I can only rely on myself. I am the most reliable person on this planet. Nobody is more reliable than me. I can't rely on anyone else. So, avoidant attachment, and when I'm talking about avoidant attachment today, I'm talking about dismissive avoidance in particular, not fearful avoidance. I'll talk about fearful avoidance tomorrow. But avoidant attachment is often misunderstood. People assume avoidantly attached individuals simply don't care. They just don't care about closeness or love or intimacy or anything like that. But the truth is far deeper, and um, and more complicated, I believe, rooted in childhood experiences. So, avoidant attachment usually develops where caregivers were physically present but emotionally unavailable. And it's kind of a generational thing, really, because if your parents were emotionally unavailable, and that then makes you emotionally available, you're likely to hand that down to your children as well. So it can be a generational thing in this case. But parents may have provided food, clothing, safety, but struggle to respond consistently to emotional needs. That's the real thing here. And what a child learns in this case is that crying doesn't bring comfort. So I'll just stop showing my feelings. If I need too much, I'll be shamed or ignored. Or the safest way to be loved is to not need anyone, not need anything from anyone, to sort myself out. And the child adapts by turning down their attachment system. We all have an attachment system, and dismissive avoidants have really learned to turn that down, almost off. Suppressing outward displays of need or distress or anything like that. So, inside, the longing for connection is still very, very much there, but it's buried under layers of self reliance and often deep seated feelings of shame and fear of rejection. So, when we then fast forward to adulthood, and this shows up in relationships, and it can be any, I normally talk about romantic relationships because that's where my interest lies, but it can be anything. It can be work, it can be friendships, it can be any kind of relationship. This shows up in relationships often as struggling with vulnerability or emotional expression. Dismissive avoidance frequently aren't really very emotional on the outside. It can be keeping partners at a safe distance, so having these really high, impenetrable walls when it comes to intimacy in particular. It could be valuing independence over intimacy. They're okay by themselves, they don't need anyone. Or it could be deactivating when things feel like too close, when things get a little bit too real in a relationship. And this may look like pulling away, like minimizing feelings, whether that's their own or worse, yours. Or it could be avoiding conflict. So these are the people who are really likely to dismiss your feelings or dismiss their own, reject their own completely, or they're likely to ghost you or just completely shut down. There will be no discussion. Um, Here's the paradox, though, and it is a real paradox. Dismissive, avoidantly attached people do want love. They desperately want love. They want it so badly. But love feels risky. It feels scary. It is scary. Deep inside, there's often like a longing to be cared for, to be able to show care to others as well. But showing it feels unsafe, almost shameful. Like, why isn't it shameful that they need somebody else to validate how they feel, or that they want to show some emotions to other people? It feels shameful, and there's this deep feeling of rejection, this deep fear of rejection, sorry, not feeling, although that may be there too. um, and here's what I tell people who come to me for help. Avoidant attachment isn't a sign that you're cold or incapable of love. I hear that a lot from dismissive avoidance. I'm incapable of love. I don't have it in me. I don't think I know how to love somebody. You're not incapable of love. It's the result of learning that your feelings weren't consistently welcomed in childhood. The very independence you pride yourself on was once your survival strategy, but you don't need to be that independent now. I mean, it's very clever when you were little, but not so clever now. So, healing comes when you begin to risk small acts of openness, learning that your needs are not a burden and that true intimacy doesn't mean losing yourself. So, because I asked a reflection question yesterday, I'm going to ask one today, and then I'll probably call it a day with this video. But if you resonate with dismissive avoidant attachment and you're watching this, can you recall a moment in childhood when showing feelings didn't feel safe? And how did you adapt to that? How did you adapt? And I can't come from to this from I always like to give examples or from my own personal experience, but I can't come at this from a personal experience because I'm not a dismissive avoidant. I was an anxious avoidant, an anxious attacher. Sorry, I'm now more into the secure line. But I once worked with a woman. I've worked with many people who are dismissive avoidants, but I once worked with a woman who told me she learned very young in her life that showing feelings wasn't safe. And she remembered, as an example, she remembered crying after falling off her bike. And she'd really hurt herself. Like her leg was ripped to shreds. She was in a lot of pain. And so she was crying. And instead of comforting her, her parents told her to toughen up, stop making a fuss, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. You know, in that moment, as a child desperate for comfort, who reached out for comfort and was rejected and shamed for asking for it, she decided, if I show my feelings, I'll just get rejected or shamed. It's safer not to need anyone. It's safer to just rely on me. So she adapted by hiding her emotions, putting on a brave face, and becoming fiercely independent. And we all think of fierce independence as a good thing, but it's really not. We're not wired to be fiercely independent. We are pack animals. We require that interaction. So when she fast forwarded to adulthood, she found herself really struggling to let partners in. She kept her walls really high, almost impenetrable, which is a common thing with dismissive avoidance. Even though deep down she longed for closeness. In fact, every time I spoke to her, all she spoke about was the fact that, she wanted love. She wanted somebody to she wanted to feel she was loved, and she wanted to be able to fully love somebody else in the same way. But there were those deep-seated feelings of shame and that fear of rejection there. So this is the dismissive avoidant attachment sort of blueprint, if you will. Emotions feel risky, so independence becomes protection. But being fiercely independent isn't protecting yourself, it's hiding. It's hiding yourself from the intimacy and the closeness that you could have with the people around you if you just let that guard down a little bit. Anyway, I would love to hear your experiences of this from your own perspective, and I will be back tomorrow to talk about the childhood roots of fearful avoidance. I haven't forgotten you guys. I am coming for you as well. So I will be back tomorrow, guys. Take care all. Bye.